Okay, everyone, I'm hoping that you can see my screen. Have you got that?
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. I'm Kathy and I work for the legacy team at Christian Aid. And my role is a training role, helping people to understand legacies more and to get more confident in speaking about it in churches, and for our staff as well. And that's my role.
And I'm Liz Burrell, also in the legacy team at Christian Aid, and my role is to oversee the Faith Will campaign.
There you go. So we're going to be presenting some slides to you today, and really they're in two halves in many ways. The first part is more general, not so much about Faith Will, but about, having that conversation about legacy in church and maybe why it's so difficult, but also why how we want to overcome that and some of the tools that we might have to help you. And then we'll move on to look at Faith Will itself, and Liz will share some of the wonderful resources we've got available. And then there'll be a chance at the end for you to ask questions as well. We're a small group, as you can see, so if you do need to interrupt me at any point and ask something, that's fine, although I don't have access to the chat at the moment. So if you do type something in, we'll come to it at the end. Okay, so we're trying to make it easier to talk about gifts and wills in church. So some of the research that we conducted in 2021 showed us that over 80% of church members are giving very regularly to support the ministry of their local church, which is a big improvement than the situation maybe 50 years ago. But fewer than 20% of these same people will remember to leave a gift to their church family in their will, which was a statistic that really was quite instrumental in making us think, what can we do to help with this situation? What can we do to get more people in churches to think about leaving a gift in their will to their church, as well as to Christian Aid? In our research, we spoke to many church leaders, almost 700 church leaders, and the results of that showed that only 24% of them were talking about legacy giving, which surprised us in many ways, although we had a hunch that it would be fairly low. And of those we spoke to, over half of them felt very negatively about the subject and had lots of fears and anxieties around it. And we also heard that 64% of them hadn't started the conversation in their church. So all of this was a massive prompt to us to think about what we could do to address the situation. Now, in our research, we asked the ministers and church leaders to identify what the obstacles were to them promoting legacy giving within the church. And we found that these were the most common answers. For many, they saw them as special gifts, and in that sense didn't really know how to best put them to use because they're very, very special and different. For some, it was the nature of them was too restricted, and there were some administrative challenges around those gifts, particularly if they restricted very narrowly to a particular thing. And then some said they just felt uncomfortable because they're asking for money for their own church, and that felt very selfish and very sort of inwardly focused. Others just were honest and said it just hadn't occurred to them. For many, it was that idea of it being a sensitive topic and maybe therefore a degree of inappropriateness around it, particularly if the congregation were elderly or there were many health issues within the church. And then lastly, we were told that for many, they had received no specific advice from the denomination. And I hasten to add here that this was not specific to the Church of England. This was a range of different denominations. So I'm sure you get it right in your denomination. So just looking more widely at the subject, why do people leave a gift to their favourite charity or to their local church? What are some of the motivations that might be behind that gift? Because understanding that might help us to know how to approach the subject and what best to say. Well, for many, it's that idea of loving the cause, loving their church, being very committed to it, very devoted to it, and really wanting to see the church or the charity thrive long into the future. And that's a powerful motivation for leaving a gift in your will to help that work continue. For others, it's remembering a loved one. Maybe the loved one gave a gift to that church in their will, and it's your way of continuing their legacy and remembering them through a gift in your will as well. It's definitely a way that we can reflect our history, our life history, and our charity connections. So for many of us, we have had a long and happy experience of our church life. Maybe we were baptized in that church, maybe we got married there, maybe our funeral services have been held there. Maybe it's the church where we've been nurtured in our faith. And for lots of reasons, we want to give back. And reflect also the journey that we've been on with the church. And it's the same for charities like Christian Aid. For many people, they say it's part of the fabric of who they are. It's part of their life. It's their identity. And it's really woven in to their lives to such an extent that why wouldn't they remember it in their will? And for some, it's a way of remembering significant moments where perhaps a marriage or births or something special that's happened during their lives that they really want to mark out by leaving a gift in their will as a kind of commemoration of that special time in their lives. Now, you'll notice that there are two cogs there in the brain in that third point, that's specifically put there because some research was done using MRI technology, or very high level research, to look into what happens in the brain when a person writes a charitable gift into their will. This was not research that Christian Aid conducted, but we've benefited from the results of that, hearing that. Two parts of the brain light up when people write a charitable gift into their will. And it's the same two parts of their brain that light up when they look back over photographs, particularly for older adults who look back over their lives and look at pictures of their early lives. The same two parts of the brain light up. So something about this reviewing of your life makes you feel very nostalgic and reflective, but in a really warm and positive way. So it's important for us to remember this, because sometimes we think it's something that, people don't really want to do, but they do. I would say it makes us happy when we leave a gift in our will to a charity or a church that we love. We know that it's going to a cause that will do some good with that money. We know that we're making a difference to the future. We're helping future generations to thrive. We are showing people who we are and what we've loved in our lifetimes. So for all of these reasons, it makes us genuinely happy. So sometimes we need to reframe our thinking about legacy giving and show ourselves that it's actually something really positive, really life affirming, and something that really makes us happy. We've done it. We've finished the job, we've written our will, we know the money's going where we wanted it to go. But you might be able to read the plaque. I don't know whether you can on your screens, but this was someone who left a legacy gift directing that £16 would be given every Sunday in the year after, I can't read that other word now, to some of the women in the church. So this was an idea that she had, and I thought that was really lovely for the poor. But yeah, thank you for sharing those.
After morning prayer, is that what it says?
After morning prayer. Okay, yeah, look at that. Isn't that wonderful? Very specific, actually. I wonder how administratively difficult it was to carry that one out, but there you go. But thank you for sharing that, and it's always good to hear about people who've been recipients of these gifts and how they've been used. So often we get a bit stumped because we think, well, actually, don't really know where to start with this. So I would say that a really important factor to any legacy giving would be to actually describe your vision to the congregation. And for many, this is a point that isn't quite clear. Some churches will have a very clear vision, which they've communicated very clearly to the congregation, but for some they haven't. So I would say that it's really important, because if people don't know what your church is aiming to do and what you want to be in the future, then they're not as likely to want to contribute to that and give a gift towards that. So presenting your future goals and inviting people in a really invitational way and an inspirational way to be part of making that real is really important. So whether that's for core costs, how do we put that in a more inspirational way? And, I would say that a lot of the time, if you spoke to people in the pews and seats, what do you think the church's vision is? They may not know. So that's a good place to start. I think trust is a very important factor in a legacy decision. So making sure that people are aware of your plans, that you're showing good stewardship of resources, being transparent and accountable in your finances. All of those things can really help to deepen trust. In the same way as when we write our wills, we want to make sure that we trust our executors to carry out our wishes. We also need to make sure that we trust the organisation that we leave the money to. And we're very fortunate at Christian Aid that people tell us that trust is a really big factor in their decision. It's really important that we drip feed the message. And I think for many churches, if it's mentioned at all, and we've seen that for many it isn't, but it could be just a once a year thing that just comes up on a Giving Sunday or something of that nature. But we know how important it is that this message is really frequently drip fed, so that it's encountered along the way through the year, because that helps to normalize legacy and take away some of the mystique and the myths surrounding it. Just make it really normal. It's what people do. It's one way that they give. I think the more we can do that, the better. The other thing about drip feeding is that at one time in a person's life, the message may not be very relevant to them, but at another point in their life, it's really relevant. Maybe there's been a change in their health or wealth or their family situation, which will mean that suddenly it becomes very relevant. The other thing about drip feeding is that once a person is ready to write their will or update their will, you will be front of mind if you have mentioned it frequently. The other thing it's important to do is demonstrate the impact, so that people will know that their gift will make a real impact on your church, on your community, and your work. So people need to understand that the difference that their specific gift will make. And I think that's really important that that's communicated. And lastly, but not least, of course, it's really important that people are able to see the kinds of things that the church might use the gift for. And so for many churches, they develop a legacy policy. And it's a really helpful document, very simple one. And I believe the templates are available in the parish resources section of the website. So it's really important that, that template just outlines the kinds of things that you would use it for, whether that might be youth work, whether that might be training for ministry, or whether that might be items, physical items that you need in the church, Bibles, hymn books, whatever it is, or building, whatever it is, it's there in the policy. And then people are aware, and providing it's, an inspiring ask, they're very much more likely to want to contribute to something that they know about. So those are just a few reasons there, a few places to start with this, to help people to be more likely to make a legacy decision in favour of your church. A little activity which perhaps you could do in your own time rather than taking the time now, but it's something that I often ask church leaders, church staff to do. At moment, people in the pews and in the seats might be thinking, why should I leave a legacy gift to the church? And we've got to move them from that to, why wouldn't I? They've got to feel really invited into that ask. So can you think of a sentence that sums up why a person should give a legacy gift to your church, and see how inspiring you can make it? So I think commonly when churches want a gift for core costs, for example, to frame it as, you know, we want to be a welcoming church for generations to come, something like that, or here for the community for generations to come, something like that, becomes so much more invitational and inspirational than just, we need to keep our lights on, we need to keep the heating going. So yeah, have a little go at that in your own time. And if there's time at the end and you want to maybe share your thoughts with this one, feel free to do so. So now we're moving on to look at Faith Will, our campaign, which is in its second year now. And I'll tell you a little bit about that, and then I'll hand over to Liz to share about the current resources for the campaign. So first of all, I'm going to hopefully show a film, a short promotional film, which we've created that's just a minute long, that really helps to sort of show what the campaign is about. Oops, it's not going to work, I don't think. Oh, well done.
Gifts in wills are a powerful way for our faith to live on and create lasting change. They enable churches to flourish in our local communities and tackle injustice across the world through Christian aid. That's why we're inviting you to take part in Faith Will. This autumn, churches and Quaker meetings across the UK are coming together with Christian Aid to make it easier to talk about gifts in wills. Simply sign up for your free Faith Will worship resources, including a service guide, short film, and ideas to inspire your congregation to consider a gift in their will to their church and Christian Aid. Imagine the change we can make by coming together to say, your faith is powerful, and so is your will. Join us.
Great, so hopefully that's helpful in just framing the campaign and showing what it's all about. And that's a promotional film that you can share in your churches. Okay, so now I'm going to talk to you about some of the motivation that we had as a team to create the campaign in the first place. Well, first of all, as you know, people weren't talking about it in churches, but also we had this other fantastic information from our research that 2/3 of people who leave a gift in their will to Christian Aid also leave a gift to their church. So that was something that made us feel quite confident that we are great partners to work with on this, since it was already happening. Working in partnership is very much what we do at Christian Aid, although we hadn't worked in partnership before in the legacy space. So this has been quite new for us and fantastic opportunity to work together. And legacy is a huge opportunity for everyone. There will be this big transfer of wealth going on in the future sort of 20 to 30 years as the baby boomer generation are passing away and handing on their wealth. So this is a good moment for people to be talking about legacy giving. So just to sort of underline really that fact on the last slide, 2/3 or more than 2/3 of those who have given a gift to Christian Aid in their wills have also left a gift of the same value or greater to their church. So just to really underline that makes us great to work in partnership, because this is a very much a complementary ask. It's not something that's, you know, going to be taking away funds from your church. It works brilliantly together. And just again to underline that, there's a quote here from Roger Gaylor, a retired minister in the Church of England church, who said, "Leaving a gift in my will to my church and to Christian Aid made sense to me because they complement each other. We're all working together to show God's love in our own communities and across the world." So that was a lovely quote that just showed that complementary nature of the campaign and how, yes, we're trying to improve life for people in our own communities, but also our global communities. And in a nutshell here is the campaign. So we're asking people to inspire their churches about giving gifts in wills this autumn. And to do that, they need to sign up for this campaign. It doesn't cost anything, but signing up is a great way for us to measure activity and engagement. But here again is that partnership work. You'll see the partners all along the bottom of the slide: the Church of England, the Quakers, the Church of Scotland, and the United Reformed Church. So we're very excited and pleased to be working together. And the joint ask: Christian Aid and the local church. So what did we want to achieve by this campaign? We really wanted to generate that increase in conversations and awareness in churches where too often it was a very neglected subject. And we also want to sort of drive up people to consider leaving a gift to their church and to Christian Aid. And notice the word consider, it's always a very soft ask. We're not getting people to pledge on the spot, sign up for anything there and there in the pew. We're asking people to think about, is this something that they would like to do? But definitely to start those conversations. So what's new for this year that's different from our first year? We have the new partner involved, the URC. They weren't on board last year, but they are this year, which has been lovely to have them. We've got some refreshed resources, and in just a moment, Liz will share those with you. And we've also made it always available. Last year, we targeted sort of September, but we've realised that for many, especially in the diocese, they prefer to do it at other times of year. So we've made it always available. And behind it all is this whole concept of families that we belong to. So we have our natural family, our biological family, and they are our first priority always in legacy giving. And we're not trying to undermine that in the least. But we are also asking people to think about the wider families that they belong to, such as the church family and our global family. And that's behind this whole campaign. And if we can communicate that, then, you know, that might make it simpler for people to see what this is all about. And over to Liz now, who's going to talk you through some of our fantastic resources.
Great, thanks, Kathy. So launched just this week, we've got fantastic Faithwheel resources for you to share to inspire your congregations. I'm going to show you our worship resources shortly, but there are also, as you'll see on this slide, 2 sets of double-sided posters that you can order or download. There's a 3-minute congregational film, so a longer film for people to show in a church service, or perhaps over coffee, or as a part of the notices, depending on how much time people have. And there's also, in the bottom right, you can see the congregational leaflet, which churches can order copies of. It's downloadable too, but you can order paper copies to put on seats for people to take away. And that gives people more information about how to leave the gift and also details of the free will services. So let me show you the 32-page worship resources. So I'm just going to have to come out of the presentation. So these are our amazing worship resources, literally just released yesterday, 1st of July. And it's a pick and mix set of resources. So there's the list of what's in them, and people can choose which bits suit their service. So there are all age talks, there are sermon notes. Kathy's going to tell you a little bit about those later. And there are new for this year some small group questions. There are prayers to choose from. So it's a really meaty resource that congregations can use, church leaders or lay people can use to create a faithful service. You can see it's got all literally a whole service plan there. So last year we had 220 churches that signed up over against a target of 100 churches. So that was fantastic for our pilot year. And we had representatives of 21 dioceses. So we were just really delighted with that. On our website, you can sign up. And we've also got a very snazzy flip-through brochure, which I can show you at the end of this, which tells people more about Faithwell and has, again, a link to the sign-up page. So, and then after sign up, the next thing that happens, churches who've signed up receive an acknowledgement email, and that in that there will be a link, and they'll have access to all those resources that I just showed you. So they can then download the film to show in their services, or they can order hard copies. Then they'll have contact from a regional Christian Aid representative. So in your area, it's Kewe, who was going to be with us today, but sadly he's not very well. But he would be in touch, and he would provide support, and he can chat through ideas with people as well. And he can also offer a speaker. So it's up to churches whether they want to deliver a Faithwell moment talk themselves, or we can provide a Faithwell speaker. So we have a team of people who are trained to go into churches to deliver the talk. So whichever works best for you. So I just want to show you the 3-minute film, because I think it's really inspiring, and I hope you'll think so too.
The local church is so important in people's lives in general. It's a place they can come where they feel safe and connected with a community.
I think it is really important for us as the family of God in this place to remember our connections and our responsibilities to one another. So we think it's deeply embedded in our faith to be generous with the good gifts that God has given to us, not just to keep them to ourselves and to say thank you very much, God, but say thank you by sharing those with our broader family to which we all belong.
We live in a tiny, fragile, completely interrelated world. So gifts and wills can help bring justice and tackle inequality in our local communities and in our global communities. Faith communities coming together for Faithwell amplifies our voices, raises awareness, and we always do things so much better when we do them together.
Gifts and wills have made a significant difference to our church. We have a ministerial assistant employed here, and her job is paid for from a legacy from a long-standing member of the congregation. And it allows us to carry out better pastoral support work amongst our own congregation, but also enables us to do more outreach to our local communities.
I mean, it is important for us to be generous because it is an outpouring of our faith. Because our faith as Christians is for us to give. The same way God freely gave Jesus to us, so we are expected to freely give as well. So one way to show love for our neighbors is with our resources. And even our gift is one way of doing that.
We've already been the beneficiary of a gift in a will, and we're really grateful for that, but we know there is always so much more that is needed, and so much more that people might be able to do if they just spent a moment to think about where they might like their resources to go.
I have gained so much from the Religious Society of Friends. It's important for me that it sustains, and a legacy is one of the ways in which I can demonstrate that.
For me, I think giving a gift to Christian Aid through my will is important because it actually says something about me. It says something about the values that I had in my life. I would encourage other people to leave a gift because of the impact that they can make after they die. It's just a kind of a signing off.
Everybody leaves a mark of some kind. The legacy I hope to leave through my faith is gentle, kind, and justice-filled. That's the mark I hope to leave.
So I'm going to hand over back to Kathy now, but that's the film that people can show in services. And I personally, I get moved by it every time.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. It's over to me now. Yeah. Hey. Yeah, I love that film too. I think it expresses it really well. And it's great to hear those examples as well of churches that have received gifts and what it's meant to them. So Liz did mention that we'd have a little look at the sermon themes. We're obviously not going to take a deep dive into them now. We go into them more in our speaker training sessions that we have available. But just as a quick overview, there are 4 ways that we approach the theme of legacy, and we have full sermon notes on each of these themes. So if you did decide to do a talk or a sermon or presentation, you've got the full set of notes. The notes on each of these are set out in paragraphs. So if you didn't want to do the whole thing, you could pick out a couple of paragraphs. Again, it's all very pick and mix and use it the way you want to use it. So Legacy as Gift is focused on the story of Abraham and rooted in that idea of his values and how he lived a value-driven life, and how he stepped out into the unknown and didn't know the future but trusted God for an unseen future, and that's linked quite clearly to legacy. The next one is really revolving around James, the teaching of James in the Bible, which is that faith and action need to go together. So, you know, faith without action is meaningless. That's the whole sort of sentiment there. Then it's approached as a resolution in terms of making a resolve, being resolved to change the world, determining to make a difference to the future. And that one's based around lots of different characters in the Bible who made a difference in their generation, and how we might do that in our modern day generation through leaving a gift in our will. And the last of these is a harvest option based around Jesus's teaching about seeds and planting seeds. And this one is very much about bearing fruit, maybe not even fruit that you will see, but fruit that will bring a harvest in the future through our gift. So there's just a really quick overview. They're all hooked onto Bible passages, but then again, there's no obligation to use those. Use these in whatever way you see fit. And there are, for this year, new for this year, small group questions attached, so they connect to each of these themes. So if you wanted to, you could take a theme and then link some questions to that and have a discussion around it, maybe in a midweek group or something of that nature, or coffee morning. So really, very adaptable resources. So lastly, or almost lastly, we're coming to the speaker training. We've referred to this already, where last year we trained 45 speakers. We held 7 sessions. You didn't have to go to all 7, just to 1, but we held them at different times of day to suit people. And again, we have that this year. So last year we had 10 diocesan staff attend the training, and the speaker training dates are different times of day between the 4th of July, that's this week, amazingly, and the 18th of September. Maybe we'll put those in the chat a bit later. But yeah, so if you would like to come to speaker training, then please do get in touch with me or let me know. And then this is just lastly some examples of how last year some of the dioceses spread the news about what they were doing in their regions. So there were newsletters, there was e-newsletters, magazines, there was even a video made there. One of the vicars in the north, in Durham, produced this wonderful video about the impact of the Faith Will campaign on her and on her congregation. So in all sorts of ways, the message got out. So we're hoping the same will happen this year. And finally, it's just our sign-up details. That's how you would sign up to the campaign. I think earlier Liz shared with you the look of the sign-up form, very simple and straightforward. And that's how people get access to resources.